Hi there, this is Jeff Sklar, and I'm pleased to welcome you to my podcast, The Practice of You. I'm a lawyer in Los Angeles, and I'm fascinated by lawyers who have brought joy and balance to their lives in a career that doesn't always make that easy. In each episode, I'll have a one-on-one conversation with a lawyer who excels professionally, but more importantly is committed to promoting their well-being. Whether athletic, creative, or mindful, there are dozens of ways that lawyers have achieved balance, and we're going to explore that together. You can find this show on all of our major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsch.com. And with that, let's start practicing. Hi there, this is Jeff Sklar. Welcome to The Practice of You, and I'm here today with Shawn Holley. Shawn, welcome.
So great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you. Shawn is with the firm of Kinsella, Holley, Iser, Kump, and Steinsapir?
Yes, you did that well.
Okay, there we go. And you are somewhat recently, you've become a name partner at the firm.
Yes, I actually was a name partner for a time, but then they moved my name to the second position. So as I understand it, that's a big deal.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think it's great. So you are a litigator here in town, both commercial civil litigator and a criminal defense attorney as well.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can talk a little bit about your practice and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out as a public defender. I was actually a public defender law clerk while I was in law school. I didn't really know what that was, but my criminal law professor said, "You'll love this job." So I took it, and she was right. I was immediately in love with criminal law and criminal defense. I saw all of these injustices that I didn't know really were going on, and I felt like this is where I need to be. And so I was a public defender for 5 years, and Johnny Cochran saw me in court one day, like, I don't know, wrangling and crazy and arguing and passionate. And he recruited me to go to his firm. At that time, Johnny Cochran was a really, really big deal in LA, especially among Black lawyers and law students. But it was all police misconduct, civil rights. And I went there and I started learning that. And then the O.J. Simpson case came to the firm. And I was then a member of the O.J. Simpson defense team for the next year and a half, which was obviously amazing in a million respects. And then I kind of ran Johnny's criminal practice. And all these years later, actually during the O.J. trial, I came to know Howard Weitzman, who had been O.J.'s first criminal lawyer and who became just an entertainment lawyer, litigator icon in town. And so he ultimately recruited me to come to his firm, and I have been there ever since. That's been since 2006. Our firm is entertainment litigation and business litigation, but because of my criminal defense background, a lot of my cases are sort of quasi-criminal civil. My clients are usually in some sort of trouble that could be civil, could be criminal, could be a mixture of both. And my job is to get them through what is, really the most difficult time of their life in many instances.
Yeah, I know just from reading that many of your clients these are A-list people. These are very, very successful people. I imagine in most facets of their life, they have a lot of control over what goes on, and ending up in a criminal process, it's got to be very different for them because they get that control stripped away.
You are exactly right. They're also used to being around people who are yes men and women. And sometimes I can't say yes. I have to say it's more complicated, and they don't really want to hear that. And so that is also an interesting dynamic as well. Yeah.
Well, that makes you a good counselor.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. So, dealing with criminal law, obviously, dealing with civil litigation, major dollars at stake, big transactions, things that go on. But criminal people, it's their freedom that's potentially at stake. And with you as their advocate, I'd imagine there's an extra weight. Maybe you're used to it after all these years, but there's an extra weight because you're dealing with somebody's freedom. How do you think about that yourself, and how do you balance it?
You are right. It is sort of next level stress when you're dealing with someone's liberty. And I take that to heart, which is to say that I'm thinking about it on some level 24/7. I'm awake in the middle of the night thinking about my clients, worrying about what might happen. And so to deal with that stress, I spin.
You spin.
I spin. I'm a SoulCycle aficionado. I have a SoulCycle bike at home. I go to classes at SoulCycle because when you are doing that, you really can think of nothing else. You're listening to great music. You're moving in a way that is, in sync with the music.
Yeah.
And it's really, really awesome. And also, my husband is a singer. He's in James Taylor's band. And his vibe is very cool, very different than mine. So also being just around him, he doesn't worry about stuff. He's very carefree. His head is in a song. He's singing all the time.
That's nice.
Also really helpful, I got to say. It really is.
That's a nice like vibe to come home to.
It really is. It's awesome.
After grinding it out in the practice during the day.
You got it.
So you've jumped to, the thing that we talk a lot about on this show, the main focus, which is what successful lawyers do outside of the law that brings them wellness, balance, and so you've brought up your spinning. So when did you start spinning? And now I've never gone spinning.
In other words, you've never spun.
I've never spun, if that's the proper
I don't know. It sounded good.
the way for me to state it. But I love riding a bike. But tell me about spinning and when you started and sort of what it's like.
Well, this is how old I am. I started spinning with the person who invented spinning. And that person is Johnny G. And he invented this concept of spinning. In fact, all of the cycling classes, including SoulCycle, they can't call themselves spinning because that's a term that he has trademarked or whatever. So it's indoor cycling. But we can call it spinning for purposes of our conversation.
Yeah, very good.
So when I started spinning with Johnny G, he really is taking you through like a virtual ride. You're going up a hill. He's telling you these things. You're really sort of envisioning that. And and this was a million years ago, probably like the mid-90s. And then after he stopped teaching spinning in LA, there are various spin classes around, but I, of course, was a spinning snob because did I mention that I started spinning with the person who
with the
spinning?
OG of spinning.
Exactly. So I was a spinning snob, and I would go to different classes and be very like, oh, brother.
Right.
But then I started hearing about SoulCycle, and I was like, this is going to be whack. This is going to be ridiculous. This is not Johnny G. And I was wrong about all of it. It's amazing because what SoulCycle does, which is different from any other spin class, including Johnny G's, is first of all, the room is dark. There are candles. And
there's
candles. But
really?
I don't want you to think that it's this sort of like airy, fairy
it's like
LA
a seance,
thing.
right?
Yeah. It's not a seance.
Right, yeah.
The music is amazing. The sound system's amazing. And the thing that is different about it is everybody is on the same beat, on the same foot. And there's a mirror in front of you. So there's a feeling of choreography and synchronicity and being in sync with your riders all around you. And you're going to the beat of the music. And the instructors are really chosen less for their ability to inspire you as far as exercise is concerned. It's much more holistic. So they're saying great inspirational things, but they apply to all areas of your life, not just, you can do it, go another mile.
Right,
it's not that at all. It's much more expansive than that. And it is not unusual for people to like break down crying if you're going through something because it really does just sort of capture like your whole, it's called SoulCycle because it's your soul, really.
Yeah.
And I feel like this sounds really corny of me to be talking in this way, but I'm telling you, everything I'm saying is true.
This is fascinating because the dark room thing I think I've heard. The candles thing wasn't aware. I had a vision of, an instructor who's in really great shape, maybe barking out some stuff. But what I didn't know is how it almost sounds like it's very like almost intimate, to draw out from people, like to reach deep and say things that connect with people in that way is pretty special.
Yeah, the SoulCycle instructor that I go to most actually exclusively now in the studio is named David, who's amazing, who's able to inspire and talk about things that are really just life lessons in a way that's not really corny. And there used to be an instructor named Angela, and she was a Black woman, and her class, I mean, the wait list would be so long to get into it. Jay-Z would be there, and Beyonce, and, and
you
Usher.
were in the cool kids class.
Very, very cool. And people called her class Church on a Bike. Because her ability to kind of inspire and almost bring you to some sort of cathartic experience was really a gift. And David has that too. And so those are the classes that I like, that you're going for just more than the exercise. But the exercise is serious as well, for sure.
Was this like after work, before work?
In the mornings.
In the mornings, before.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
So this has got to set you up pretty well for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, during COVID, obviously you couldn't go to the studio. So then they marketed, they really were kind of late on the marketing because Peloton jumped the god in front of them.
Everyone bought a Peloton, it seems like, during that period.
But the SoulCycle bike is like SoulCycle, you know what I mean? Which is very different from Peloton in that even virtually, you are on the beat, on the same foot as the instructor, and it's a very different and special and awesome thing. I love it.
How often do you go?
Well, now, because I have the SoulCycle bike at home, I usually only go once a week, and I ride my bike at home, and I also do yoga at home, and I also swim. So I do all of these things, but I have to work out every day in order to deal with my stress and clear my head. I must.
Well, we have the swimming in common for sure. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah. So what do you have a pool?
Well, I do a few different things. I do master's swimming, which is over at UCLA, and I go to it's so fancy. And then I go to a couple other lap swimming pools.
Well, my pool is not that long, but what I do, I call my swimming regimen 30 Rock because I have 30 rocks and I have them.
Oh, is this like Laird Hamilton thing?
No, I created this.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
So I have the 30 rocks on one end of the pool, and then I go up and back, and after I've come back, then I put one rock into my little dish, and I have to do that 30 times. And the reason this is important and was devised by me is because I will only consider it a workout if I get all 30 rocks into the bowl. And you can't be thinking about that when you're swimming. Like, wait, was that 1? Was that 5? So this way, you don't have to think about what number lap you're on because you're just going to put the rock in the bowl when you get back.
And when there's no rocks.
When all 30 rocks are in the bowl, then and only then will I consider it a workout for the day.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my deal, you count those lane line things? We would count those, but I like your way better.
Yes, because with yours, I think you're having to
still
count.
have to count.
Well,
and then the waves come and it moves them and you lose count and it's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
I thought at first what you were saying is like there's some of these people that take bricks and things and they go underwater and they're like running with that. I was like, wow, she's really hardcore.
Absolutely not. No, it's like mind clearing and beautiful. We have a really pretty backyard. I'm playing music and my head is clear and all I have to do is put a little rock in the bowl at the end.
That's so great. And so I guess in your world, do you know other lawyers that are this connected to an outside activity like the way spinning is for you?
I don't think I do. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, but I don't think so. I have exercised my entire life. It's a part of my life. So there's no way in the world that I would not do that. I get really, really upset, honestly, when my schedule is such that it's really hard to fit it in. I'm like resentful of that.
It's funny. The word you just said is the word that I was thinking because I've found myself feeling that way before too, is when you're so jammed up that, and your clients are counting on you. There are times that stuff just has to take precedence, but I'm at a bit of a disadvantage when I don't get my workout in.
Yeah.
It levels me out from a stress standpoint. I can withstand so much more punishment.
Yeah, for sure.
After having done that, and you feel like you've accomplished something.
Definitely. It's the best. It's the best.
I mean, because the stress in your line of work, certainly in the criminal side, I expect is very intense, especially with your clientele.
Yeah, and the civil litigation that I do is a lot. I get a letter from a lawyer who represents usually a woman who claims that a famous person, usually a male, did something horrible, usually of like sexual assault type nature, often many, many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the person who's accused is my client, becomes my client. And they say I don't even know who this person is. I don't recognize the situation at all. And I do an investigation, and my investigation confirms what they've said, which is that there really doesn't appear to be anything that corroborates the claim of the person, the plaintiff, who's not a plaintiff yet. And the letter basically lays out all of these sort of salacious allegations. And then the final paragraph is, but, we're going to file this and it's going to be public, and it's going to ruin your client's career.
And there comes the threat.
We go to a mediation. So I say to my clients, I would recommend that we go to this mediation and that we try to resolve this. And they say, but I didn't do anything wrong. I go, I completely believe you. That's not the point, though. The point is we want you to live happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I am certain that if this case was filed and we went to trial, that we would win, but the reputational damage that you would suffer in the 2 or 3 years it would take us to get to trial, it's not something that you should go through.
Mm-hmm.
And, that is difficult for my clients to grasp. I understand they didn't do this thing. And yet I'm saying we're going to go through this process in a way that's going to cause you to spend some money. I'm going to make it way less than the person is demanding, and I do. But, I look at it as sort of the cost of that being them, right? It's an investment in their reputation, image, and brand. So even though those aren't criminal cases, they are criminal adjacent in that often the allegations are criminal in nature, though nobody's ever gone to the police. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which also is in my, I don't know that it really is real. But even if it isn't, they're going to file this lawsuit. We're going to win, but you're going to be damaged in the interim. So those are very stressful and difficult situations as well. I'm going to put them all under the heading of an injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And injustices kind of drive me crazy. So I really want to try to right those where I can in the best way that I can. And so that's stressful too, because I don't necessarily have control over how that's going to go, right? But I think my clients are always pleased with how we did it.
That's great. I mean, it's one thing that comes to mind, you've got these strategies now for how you manage your stress and how you're spinning and how committed you are to that. When you were a younger lawyer and Johnny Cochran discovered you and you found yourself shortly thereafter on OJ's defense team, I imagine that was a really intense period for a year and a half or however long that lasted, especially being the junior one around. How do you compare the way you balance and protect your well-being now as compared to that younger lawyer then?
Yeah, that was a crazy time. We worked 7 days a week, 15, 16, 17-hour days, Christmas, 4th of July. There was no time off ever. It was very, 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 very stressful. I don't think I worked out much during that. There was just no way to do that, really. Mm-hmm. So now, and you're right, I was the low man on the totem pole. I was really just jazzed about being there.
You were in the biggest trial maybe that's happened in the century.
Yeah, and I was just, in the presence of greatness every day.
The dream team.
It was incredible. And now where I am in my career, I have more control over what I do. I can have a better work-life balance. I can make decisions that I obviously couldn't make that. I mean, clearly, no matter, I would have done that trial regardless, but I can better craft what my work schedule is like for the most part now in ways that I couldn't as a it was nice of you to say younger lawyer as opposed to young lawyer. I noticed that and I appreciated it.
Listen,
Thank you.
I think we're still plenty young.
That's right. There you go.
I mean, I found it's really hard for younger lawyers.
Yeah.
I think they run into a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not going to say anything because you're just trying to make your bones and show that you've got what it takes. I was talking to a young lawyer recently, and she was really grinding it out for somebody you'd know in town. And, you know, when you're young, you've got that energy too. You can sort of withstand the punishment. What I've found is as you become a little bit more experienced, more senior as a lawyer, the counting on youth alone to preserve you isn't really a strategy, you know, because there's a little bit of a waning property to that. And you need to, at least with me, I've had to backfill that with other strategies so that I can maximize my, well, we'll call it well-being.
Yeah. You know, that's really one of the great things about being a public defender is, I mean, when you're in trial, that's one thing. When you're not in trial, I mean, you work for the government, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have very set hours. You are friends with other public defenders who have the same set hours. So there's lots of, I won't say free time. Well, I will say free time. I mean, compared to private practice, I mean, you're off work by like 4:35, you know?
Yeah.
And
you're going to all go down and get a beer or something
100%.
like on the TV shows, you know?
Absolutely. Yes. So that was a great place to be as a young lawyer as well. And, you know, pre-Johnny and OJ.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me this, shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about the fact that you have 3 beautiful kids. Is that?
Yes and no. I have one daughter. My husband and I have one daughter. He has 2 older daughters, my stepdaughters, who were pretty much grown by the time I came to know them, and they're awesome. Our daughter is 21, and she's a student at Howard in D.C., and she's awesome. And I have a great relationship with my 2. I hate to say stepdaughters. I really say it out of respect and deference to their moms.
Yeah.
But I wish there was a word that didn't say, I mean, I know people go like bonus daughter, but that sounds kind of corny. I'm going to have to come up with my own word for them. They're awesome.
So the challenge that I think many women who are in the law face is wrestling with motherhood and success in the profession, and that the profession forces difficult choices on women, at least traditionally, that aren't forced on to men.
That's right.
You know, how have you managed that over time? Because you've figured out a way to be a successful mom and a successful attorney.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that want to be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was an older mom, so I was at a place in my career where I could just make certain pronouncements about how things were going to be. And those pronouncements were, I'm going to be off on Fridays because on Fridays I'm going to work at the school and serve the pizza lunch and be present for my kid and do that. And that was just like, I mean, that was an absolute. That's what it has to be.
Right.
And it was that. And also in private practice, because I was an older mom, and so I really, you know, came to the firm with a little bit of, I don't know, ability to say certain things.
A little more control.
A little more control. You know, I mean, I just made the decision. I'm going to be at my kids' school. I'm going to do pickups when I can. I'm going to do drop-offs when I can. I'm going to be at all of the things. That's just what's most important. And I feel really grateful that I was at a place in my career where I could do that, and I did do that. Yeah, I mean, I remember at firm there was a big kind of opening party, and I had said in advance that's the same night as something at my daughter's school, and I don't know if they forgot that, but there was I was like, I'm sorry, I can't be at the opening thing because my daughter's school takes precedence. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that's just how it's been. And I'm really happy that I was able to do that because it would have been a lot more challenging if I had done that at a younger age and an earlier stage of my career.
So what advice would you give to, younger, let's call them newer women attorneys who are, getting ready to start families and some firms are more flexible these days.
Yeah.
I think it's changing. I know our firm is very flexible, and because we want to have great lawyers for the long term, and we don't want to lose people because they've decided to have a family, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah,
not a bad thing.
definitely.
It's a good thing.
Yep.
What advice would you have for, lawyers that are going through that, or facing that maybe don't have as much control as you happen to have when you became a mom?
Well, one thing, which is related to your question, but not exactly the answer, is that I speak at law schools a lot, and I teach some, trial advocacy courses and things. So I tell young women who are in law school and people thinking of going to law school, I say to women, if you know for a fact that you want to have a family, you have to keep that front of mind because, as you said, women have to make choices that men do not because there is a time frame within which you really do need to have a kid. I feel really lucky. I was not young at all when, I had my daughter. What happens is, particularly if you've chosen the right area of law, as I did as a public defender, it's great. And you're just consumed with it. And you love those friends that you're going to have a beer at 4:30 with after you get out of court. And it's just great. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh my God, how did I become like 38 years old? You know what I mean? And you have to oh my God, it's like it's now or never, right? So I always tell young women to keep that in mind. Don't lose sight of that. I didn't know, I wasn't the type of person of I for sure want to be a mom. I didn't know, but I reached a point where I'm like, oh my God, if I'm going to be a mom, it's now or never. Some women know they want to be a mom, and those women need to always keep that in mind. I think that people have different priorities, and whatever your priority is, it's okay. But if your priority is to spend time at your kid's school or with your kid or whatever it is, then you just have to be able to say to the person who's interviewing you, this is what's important to me. And maybe that's not going to be the right place. If they're like, well, that's not going to work for us, then it's not going to work for you either. You know what I mean? It's important. Both things are important, and you just kind of have to figure out what's most important to you and set that out right.
Yeah, you need to be a little bold.
Yeah, when I started at my firm, all of the women there were moms of youngish kids, and we were all off on Fridays.
Yeah, well, that's pretty great.
Fridays. Yeah.
You know what? And these days, I think certainly competing for talent and everything else, there's more of an ability in firms to say how you want things to be and not get thrown out the door.
Yeah, there are a few good things, I guess, that came out of COVID.
Yeah.
And one is I think that it's changed sort of the way we view what a firm must look like. At our firm, we were more productive working from home. So when our lease was up, the managing partner's like, let me ask everybody who wants to have an office. And the only people who wanted to have an office were people with young kids who needed to go be someplace else for several hours in the middle of the day. But almost everyone else just is like, I'm happy to be at home. And so I work at home for the most part. I have an office at my office building, but I work from home a lot, which also gives me the freedom and flexibility to do my swimming with my 30 rocks, which you now understand.
I love that.
Or ride my SoulCycle bike, whatever it is. Because home is, my work base, then that allows me more flexibility as well. My daughter's been home for the summer, so that's great. It's just, you got to make it work. You just got to know what your priorities are and stick to those.
And are you able to turn work off? Or I've talked to there's been divergent philosophies that have come through this show. There are some people who bifurcate work and their law life and their non-law life, and neither the two shall meet. And then that's how some people function. there are other people where it's a real blend, and that they don't feel resentful if they're in a beautiful place walking and at the same time pondering a transaction, right? Like so not. It's like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. There's like two, Star Trek, Star Wars.
I'm a Beatles
So,
girl.
right. So me too. So what's your take on that?
Well, the nature of my practice is such that I can never be completely off the grid, right?
Yeah.
Because my clients do find themselves in a particularly difficult situation, usually. It's very stressful and concerning for them. And sometimes they need to reach me. And sometimes I'm at a place where I wish I didn't have to be reached. And I could not answer the phone, but that's going to have a consequence, not only in my career, because these people expect you to be available, but really, to be honest with you, more importantly, I want to be there for them because I know they're going through a difficult time. And my heart goes out to them and they're freaking out. You know what I mean? So I want to be able to, assuage their concerns, answer their question, let them know that I'm, wherever I am, but I wanted to answer the call so I could put their mind at ease. Also, my assistant, Gentry, has been my assistant for 26 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so she is amazing. And she steps in and is a calming force. I say to my clients when I first meet them, you may love me. That is because you haven't talked to Gentry yet.
Yeah.
Once you talk to Gentry, I'll be second fiddle. And she's really awesome. And we've been together so long that she can often assuage those concerns because she wants me to have time off too.
Well, what an amazing partnership you and Gentry have.
For sure.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing.
So I know about you've described caring and sensitivity in your representation to your clients, and you sort of, with other words, just alluded to that in even when you're away, maybe wanting to pick up the phone because you want to put them at ease.
Yeah.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, your view, being a counselor, but how caring and sensitivity relative to your clients, how that matters to you.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to people, and I think you're a corporate lawyer.
I am.
And I think that there is a real beauty to that, in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, there isn't necessarily or always this sort of emotional piece to it. Almost all of my work, there is an emotional piece to it. P-I-E-C-E. And so that allows you and someone who does maybe, and the other people in my firm who, do kind of intellectual property, breach of contract, things like that, it's kind of black and white. So there isn't this emotional component, which is freeing in some ways, because you don't have to be, you might be lying awake at night thinking about, I got to get that brief done, but you're not like angst-ridden as I am. And so that's a blessing and a curse, right? It feels really great to me to have an emotional connection and really feel a sense of, I have to do justice for this person who is suffering and whatever it is, but it makes it so that you really can't ever turn that off, which isn't to say that I don't have fun. I have a lot of fun. I was born and raised in LA, so I got a lot of friends that I've been friends with since first grade, Crescent Heights Boulevard Elementary School.
There you go.
But
Fairfax High.
That's right. But, it really is kind of a blessing and a curse to have that sort of emotional connection with your clients and with your work, which is that it's always kind of there on some level.
I found in my corporate law practice, I do a lot of partner disputes. Even though I'm not a litigator, I help get those sorted. And those get pretty hairy and emotional. They're essentially oftentimes divorces of just a different kind.
Yeah.
And just for me as a lawyer, I get the most satisfaction out of situations where somebody really needs help.
Yeah.
Right. If we're doing a $100 million M&A transaction, that's great. Love working on those. and I feel like we provide a lot of guidance but there is something about when somebody's in a real jam,
Yeah.
and where you get to say, as a lawyer, I'm going to help you. I've got you.
That's right.
And then they know that you're there for them. You get that, I suspect, satisfaction extra in your practice. And that's a really cool thing.
No, and you use the exact language. I mean, one of my closest friends is somebody I met at SoulCycle. I didn't really know her. She was just one of the cool girls on the other side of the room. And one day on a Sunday after class, she came up to me and she said, I need to talk to you. And I said, well, that's never good.
Right. Exactly.
And she loves telling the story. I won't say her name, but she wouldn't mind because she tells it all the time. And she had gotten a DUI. And I said, I got you. And she tells that story all the time because I said those very words that you just said, I got you. And, I mean, she did it. She was over the legal limit. She was mortified for being over the legal limit. I handled her case. She actually relished the alcohol classes that you have to take, which are educational. It resonated with her. She understood the assignment, she always is in a lift. And, even though that wouldn't be characterized as like a win in the way that we talk about winning and losing as lawyers, but it was a win because she wasn't somebody trying to like get out of it. She saw it as the wake-up call that it was. It changed her complete life. And now she's one of my closest friends to boot.
Yeah. And you were there for her at the moment she needed somebody, because that's scary.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely scary.
That's a scary thing. And, in life, I think when somebody says, I got you. Yeah. It's like, okay. Yeah. Like this problem's not solved yet. Right. But I know that I have confidence that this person's going to get it solved for me. Yeah. What a good thing. Yeah, it's good. It's good. One other thing I wanted to tackle briefly is not many people get to say that a television show was, I will use your words, loosely based on their life. Yes, loosely. Loosely. Because so the character... talk to me about that. Yeah. So it was never my goal or desire to have a television show with a character loosely based on me. It was the furthest thing from my mind. But because I'm a partner at an entertainment litigation firm, I am around creative people. And, who are clients of the firm or of mine in one way or another. Yeah. And over the years, people have always said, your life should be a television show. All of these things that happen are so crazy and so funny and so exciting. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I'm a fun dinner party guest for sure. But I don't think it's enough for a television show. Anyway, ultimately, we end up with Kerry Washington as a producer and Larry Wilmore as a producer. And really the thing that they gravitated toward in me were these stories that I would tell about cases. And most of the cases that I do, it's a gray area. It's not black and white. I mean, there's an explanation. Maybe they did the thing, but you understand why. Or maybe they didn't do it, but they're a horrible person. I mean, right, you know what I mean? Like there's all these shades of gray. And those stories can be really interesting and compelling. So when ultimately we end up in, a room with studio and network executives, my job is just to kind of tell some of these stories that best exemplify this gray area situation. And that's kind of how it happened. They were like, this is amazing. And so that was and is a premise of the show, but also it needs to be like sexy so people will watch it. Right, right. So there's no way that she could be happily married as I am. This is the character loosely based on me. She has to be separated, and she's very beautiful. And there's lots of good-looking men who enter her life as this high-powered, beautiful lawyer, and she's separated, which of course gives her the freedom to engage in all sorts of shenanigans with these various hot guys in the show. A lot of situations.
Then
the show is called?
The show is called Reasonable Doubt. It's on Hulu. The second season starts August 22nd.
Yeah. You're an executive producer?
I'm an executive producer, which what that means I do is I look at the courtroom and legal scenes and make sure that they are as accurate and close to reality as they can possibly be, given the excitement and shenanigans of the show.
Right. Within the constraints of
Yes.
needing to entertain.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But yeah, I always feel like I have to tell people loosely. They're like, wait, did you do? I mean, it opens with my character.
Right, because this is not exactly your life.
It's really not. And it opens with her like tied up in a chair with a gun pointed at her. I'm like, that thankfully has never happened to me or any lawyer I know.
Right. Well, that would be scary.
Yes. But it starts with that. So attention.
Well, I think it's pretty cool to have a TV show, whether it was exactly about you or very loosely based on you, just to be involved in the creative process and to do that. That's got to be another outlet for you a little bit too.
Yeah. It's really cool. You know, I mean, as I said, you know, my husband's a creative person. It's nice to be around creative people who, you know, not only have a life and career totally different than mine, but also just like think differently. You know what I mean? Like they are just a different animal, and that's nice to be around too.
Oh, that's great. Let me ask you this. Is there anything else that we should cover or things that you'd want to say along the lines of, you know, lawyers need and dealing with the pressures of the job and balance and how you've done it, or advice you'd have for younger lawyers or anything like that?
You know, I think I've probably said it all. I think it's hard when you're a young lawyer to know necessarily what your priorities are because you're just a brand new baby.
Yep.
But I tell law students that I speak with, like, all of these are opportunities for you to figure out what you like and what you don't like. Kind of like when you're dating somebody, like, you know what, I don't like this quality in guys. I'm going to make sure I don't date a guy in the future who has that quality. That's kind of what you're doing is you're starting out in your practice, figuring out what you like, what you don't like. And there's no mistakes, only lessons. So you're going through that process, you're learning those things, you're hopefully finding the area of the law that speaks to you and makes you happy and makes you want to be there and do that. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, maybe you're somebody who wants to have a family and maybe your priorities shift a little bit. I just think it's important to be in touch with who you are and what you want to do and make that happen if you can, you know, and you can, of course you can. You can.
I think that's great. Yeah. Shawn, thank you so much for joining me today.
So fun. Thank you.
This is great. And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
If I ever get in trouble, I know who to call.
I'm your girl. I got you.
You got me.
I got you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on another show. Thanks for joining us today on The Practice of You, hosted by me, Jeff Sklar. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsch.com. I really appreciate your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others. Until next time, enjoy the present moment and don't forget to practice you. This podcast is considered attorney advertising by the California State Bar. The discussions in this podcast do not constitute professional advice of any kind, including without limitation, medical, legal, or business. And you are advised to consult with your own physicians, lawyers, and other advisors before undertaking any activities discussed in this podcast.